Welcome to Curious City, the podcast from Glasgow Live Museums. I'm David Scott, and this is how it works. In each episode, we head out into the city, discovering the stories that surround us. Who knows where we'll go and what we'll hear this time when we begin to take a look at the rich history of music in Glasgow, the musical capital of Scotland. Glasgow's music scene is legendary, and it's very difficult to talk to somebody here who doesn't love the vibrant and varied scene that we have. Now, we're only scratching the surface this week. We will be back with future music episodes. To get us started, we're joined by journalist, music superfan and man behind Lost Glasgow, Norry Wilson. Norry, welcome back.
Hello, nice to be back.
Norry, we're at Burrell today, but before we head out and start exploring, can you tell us, are you somebody who likes a museum?
I absolutely love museums. Growing up, I practically spent every Sunday in the Kelvin Grove while Mum was making the Sunday lunch. The first thing myself and my brother ever ran to see every time was the live bee's nest, which we just thought was absolutely fascinating. And then after that, it would be the armour. Small boys like big chibs, and you were forever wondering which gun or sword you would get if you could get into those cases.
Brilliant, and they're all still there.
I know, it's remarkable. When I go back to Kelvin Grove again, doesn't matter. I mean, I'm coming up 58 now and I feel like I'm 8 again.
Are you and hundreds other like you, I think?
I think so.
Today, we're here to talk about music. Where do we start? What does music mean to you, Norry?
When I was 11 in 1977, punk happened, disco was at its peak, and two-tone was just arriving. So your head was going in 3 different directions at the same time, trying to find your own tribe, your own style tribe, your own music tribe. Days spent hanging about the basement of Listen Records in Renfield Street, HMV in Union Street, and then of course the huge Virgin Megastore. And you just needed to look about, and you soon enough recognised your tribe, because they dressed like you, they looked like you, they were buying the same records as you, and walking about town with an LP under your arm. Folk would, he's got that, yeah, and the next thing you know, you're sitting having a coffee with a nice looking girl, because you've bonded over music.
What a way to start. What does music mean to Glasgow?
It's that great release, really. It's probably something that goes back to almost our ancient Highland, Gaelic, Celtic roots, that you can lose yourself in music. Your inhibitions fall away. The amount of folk you see get into a gig looking quite sensible, and 2 hours later they're coming out and their t-shirts ripped to bits and their face is red with sweat and their hair's all over the place. I mean, I lost a shoe, a 10-up dock at a Ramones gig, and once had to hop home in the snow. And if you told me that had happened before I went into the gig, I'd thought, oh, it's never going to happen. But sure enough, the power of the music, you end up in the mosh pit, and before you know it, you've lost one half of a £50 pair of docks, never to be seen again.
You mentioned a couple of record stores there. That's where we're going to start this week. Michael headed out to what we think is Burrell's nearest record store last week to find out more about what it's actually like to run a shop in the city today.
I'm Faye Woodcock, and I'm the manager here at Some Great Reward Record Cafe, which is based in the Cooperage at 674 Pollokshaws Road. Some Great Reward sprung to life in March 2018. At that point, we were based on Victoria Road, and the concept had been a bit more cafe-based with a small record shop in the back. Due to things like the pandemic and different opening hours, over time we still do coffee, but the cafe aspect is a smaller part of what we do, and we're now a fully fledged record shop which has moved location to the Cooperage.
Brilliant. And can you tell us a bit about the different types of music that you sell in the shop?
Of course. So we focus on the vinyl format, and all of our stock is new first-hand. We don't really deal in second-hand records. We have a wide range of music, so anything from indie, rock, pop, and over the years we've kind of curated quite a good jazz and metal section, which is probably in part for my personal preference, but also fed in by what people tend to be buying from us.
What is it that you think is important about record shops in Glasgow?
I think that, if you go to a gig or something like that, you're there safe in the knowledge that you're surrounded with people that have at least one thing in common with you, which is the band that you're there to see. And I feel that if you come into a record shop, you're there with an open mind to either experience new music or be around people with a like-minded passion for music. And the vinyl format is just quite a special thing. It's been iconic for decades.
Glasgow again's got such a great music scene in terms of record shops, musicians, club nights. What is it you think is special about the city in that way, and is there a crossover between the different music scenes and your shop?
Glasgow has always had a reputation for being a place that creatives and musicians can kind of come to. Again, with its storied history, maybe it's seen as a destination for some people to think that they can make it when they get here. There's also just always been great music programmes in the city, so you've got like the likes of Stowe College, you've got Strathclyde University's old music course, and then obviously we've got the Conservatoire as well. This is just putting a lot of people with good musical talent and good musical skill out into the immediate area. And as we all know, Glasgow is known as one of the friendliest cities, so it's not surprising that these people are then working with each other to develop scenes and play with each other, creating loads of different music. We recently have been looking a lot at the local jazz scene. There are some phenomenal musicians that are putting out really, really great albums. A local group, Azamaya, put out a record. They launched their album here. There's Corto Alto, who released an album which is just scaled up the charts, plus a bunch of different other things like groups like Amara, Joseph Akin. And when you get into the depths of it, these are a lot of the same musicians playing with each other in different projects. So there's just a kind of comfort and confidence that I think these musicians have when it comes to knowing what to expect from playing with each other, and their output is just phenomenal.
Faye, in terms of the different ways that people are consuming music now, you've got streaming platforms, but also a real kind of appetite now for people buying records. How has that impacted what you do?
Because music is so available now on streaming platforms, the commitment to buying a record, I think, it helps you feel closer to the band or to the artist, and it's a thing that you really hold dear because you know that you can listen to it whenever you want, but maybe you want to have that special tactical thing to sit down and focus on rather than the freedom to have it on in your kitchen whilst you're walking about the house, and really just sit and go through the liner notes and see who's on it and read all that kind of stuff.
In Glasgow Museums at Riverside, we've got a display of a record store, and people really like coming in and going through the records that we've got on display that we've collected for the museum. Is there something special about coming into a record store in person rather than buying a record online, do you think? Absolutely.
We are meant to be professionals in the field. People that work in record shops really are quite passionate about what they do and always have favourites. There's that famous high fidelity moment where you put a track on and all of a sudden you say you're going to sell 3 or 4 of that record, and I'd be lying if I said that doesn't still happen. And there's really no better feeling than knowing that you're listening to something that you want to listen to, with customers coming in and going, oh, what is that? Can we have a chat about it? Either sending them on the way to have a stream of it and see if they do like it and then come back and get it, or just, then and there going, wow, this has changed my life, I really want to take that home. So without the actual physical spaces and the racks to browse and the music in your ears, anyone can sit and have 3 tabs open, listen to what they want to buy it on Amazon and have it arrive the next day. But when you come into a record shop, you're really expanding your opportunity to learn more and be outside the box.
Fantastic. What do you think's special about a vinyl record, Faye?
Again, I think it really can help you bring yourself closer to the band. Like, I remember when Radiohead released In Rainbows, it was one of the first times, I think it was during the whole Napster thing, they had put it up for pay what you want digitally. And I was quite young at the time, and I think I paid about 50 pence for it. And as soon as I got a record player, the first record that I bought was In Rainbows on vinyl. And it was a really special moment. I sat down and I listened to it in a way that I never had before. Not just because I found the audio quality to be significantly better, it wasn't so badly digitally compressed, but it just felt like I was finally giving back what I couldn't at the time to be closer to the band. So yeah, I think there's always going to be something special in that for me.
What is your favourite part of your role working here in the record shop?
That's such a tough one. It really is everything. I'm really fortunate that I've been able to put so much of my personality into the shop. I live super close to the locale. My dog comes to work with me. I'm out in local bars and restaurants and clubs all the time, just seeing people that recognise me for what I do. And it is just such a huge sense of community. I don't think I know what community was before this shop became such a big part of my life. And you meet people in the area that are, going to gigs because you recommended them, and it just feels really wholesome.
If people want to find out where you are, can you tell us how they do that?
We have a website which is somegreatreward.scot. Our Instagram is sgr_record cafe.
Faye, it's been great learning a bit more about what you do and the importance of your shop and the community in Glasgow. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. It's been my pleasure.
No better feeling indeed. It was great hearing from Faye, and Michael reminded us about the wonderful record shop display at Riverside Museum. We're going to start talking about performance now. We're going to stay on the south side. We've been to Some Great Reward, and Alan's been out to Queen's Park to visit one of the city's many community choirs.
I met up with Ellen Smith from Choir. Ellen, along with her friend Ryan Lasky, co-founded the Choir, which is Glasgow's very own fully inclusive choir for all members of the queer community. At the heart of it, it's offering a safe place for people to come together in a non-threatening space and enjoy all the benefits of singing together, as well as the mental health benefits of being part of a community group. Let's hear from Ellen now.
Hello, my name's Ellen Smith and I am a current opera student. I'm originally from the Shetland Islands. I grew up with a folk background and my claim to fame is that I've sang Carnegie Hall in New York City. Ryan was always saying, you know what we should do? We should start a queer choir. But we really felt that there was a distinct lack of queer spaces for people in Glasgow that were based on community rather than based on let's go out and have a party. He says, you and I, we can start a choir. Over the years I had been building up more and more experience in running different choirs. Ryan had contacted Category as Books and we said, can we use your bookshop? We had like over 60 people had signed up and we're like, we're not all going to fit in Category as Books. So I was like, let's try this harmony now. And we ended up managing to put together in that first rehearsal Mamma Mia in 3-part harmonies with different oohs and ahs. And I thought it sounded really, really good. I was really pleasantly surprised by how quickly it came together. When I'm singing in a choir, the feeling of having this wall of sound around you and having everybody striving. There's no competition, there's no nastiness, everybody all wants to make that same sound. And I wanted to give other people the opportunity to feel what I've always felt when I'm singing in choirs. It's a safe space and it's for you to come and enjoy being yourself, unapologetically yourself, because as many of us who are queer might well have experienced that feeling of feeling different and feeling that you don't quite fit in. And I wanted other queer people to have somewhere where they felt that they did belong and that they did fit in, and we would never ask you to prove your sexuality or how you identified.
As a gay man myself, the idea of being in a group like that sounds really comforting, actually. Just thinking of that, has that influenced like the type of material, the songs that you choose?
I think what's always been the focus of anybody who's been involved in making the music side of things of choir is that does fit our values. You are able to make it choirable.
What does being co-founder of Choir mean to you? How would you describe what that feels like?
It still blows my mind that it has grown to what it has. I can't quite comprehend that it has become that, because I didn't quite envisage that it would go as far as it did. And the fact that people are still getting so much out of it is not something that Ryan and I ever would have comprehended. I do remember after we'd performed at, I think it was the Pride Awards, there was an after party. They were just running on the high of that post-concert high that every musician gets. And also having sung as themselves an out and proud queer person in a queer choir. I remember we got t-shirts with the logo that Ryan's husband Tom designed. We had the after party for the Pride Awards had been in the Corinthian. Everybody was dancing around. We were all wearing our choir t-shirts, and I was dancing on one of the benches in the Corinthian. I was dancing with my friend Christina. As we were dancing, she just kind of stopped and then she put her hand on my shoulder and she just pointed to everybody and she says, "You and Ryan did that."
Earlier on when we were speaking, you mentioned you performed at Carnegie Hall. I've got to ask, what did that feel like?
I was actually seeing Home Alone 2 last night at the drive-in movies at Lomond Shores there with my partner, and I says, "That's Carnegie Hall," and I was like, "I've sang there." I was so fortunate to have the experience that I have had with the National Youth Choir of Scotland with NICOS. Through them I've been able to do 4 proms at the Albert Hall, and then the big one was Carnegie Hall. And I think you're so focused when you're singing, you're so focused on making sure that you're bringing absolutely everything to the performance, but it's always the sort of realisation that hits you afterwards, because you don't have the brain space when you're performing to concentrate on anything else other than the music that you're singing and watching the conductor and making sure that you're doing everything that he or she is asking. But I remember afterwards it was just this absolute overwhelm. One of those ones that still seems surreal, and I think always will, unless I go back there in solo, you know.
Ellen, thank you so much.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you very much. I love sharing more about choir. I love that it's still getting interest. And if you are somebody that identifies as LGBTQIA+, and you want to come and meet other queer people, come along and join choir. As I say, you don't need to audition, don't need to be able to read music. If you want to come and enjoy the sheer joy of singing with other people, then we'd love to have you at choir.
Thank you, that sounds brilliant.
You're more than welcome.
Okay, so time to start talking about another key part of the city's scene, our venues. We reckon the city puts on about 130 live music events every week, many of them the types of gigs we're talking about today. And to get started, Bryony is headed out west to find out about the first of this episode's venues. If it's not legendary yet, it should be. It's SWG3.
On the banks of the Clyde, just up the road from our very own Riverside Museum, you'll find SWG3, a unique arts and music space in a former industrial setting and one of Glasgow's best-known venues. I caught up with Meryl Gilbert, SWG3's Arts and Business Director, over Zoom to find out more about it. So, Meryl, hi. Thanks for agreeing to talk to us today. So could you introduce yourself and just tell us what you do at SWG3?
Great. So hi, I'm Meryl Gilbert. I started working here in 2014. I've had many roles over those years, but I'm now Arts and Business Director, and I program in all the arts events, exhibitions, corporate events, private parties, all the food and drink events, and any restaurant pop-ups as well. But I also look after all of our partnerships and sponsorships within the business as well.
What would you say is the story of SWG3?
The gigs in the clubs, they started in 2011, but prior to that, we had the artist studios, which started in 2005, meaning it's our 20th birthday next year. Art's always been deeply rooted in SWG3, but so is the insanely busy music program as well. We have 5 venues, the Yard, which can hold up to 4,000 people for an outdoor show. And then the Galvanizers, TV studio, warehouse, and the Poetry Club are all indoor venues, and that gives us a capacity of 2,000 people at one time. And we also have Scotland's first purpose-built home of street arts, which is the Yardworks Studio, which provides space for hundreds of artists to create and experiment and hone down their skills. People from across Partick, York Hill, and Govan using that space just now. And that was created off the back of our amazing festival, Yardworks Festival, which is now in its 6th year. But that takes over our yard and the Galvanizers and the TV studio, so the whole ground floor of the venue.
So you kind of talked a little bit there about people coming in from, Partick and Govan and so on. So how would you say the venue is kind of part of the city? How does it relate to the city and the whole kind of arts scene that we have here in Glasgow?
I feel like we cross so many different demographics of people. Our audiences are so varied. Our concerts attract all different ages, depending on who that band might be. And we could have up to 20 different artists play in one week. Events like Yardworks, Art Car Boot Sale, our summer markets, they're fantastic for children, families, young people, old people, anyone. And then we also have our community garden. And this year we'll have workshops and events for anyone to come along to, or just come and hang out in the beautiful green space that we now have. So something for everyone really down here.
Could you tell us, do you have a favourite memory of your time at SWG3?
A standout, unforgettable event for me was Glasgow International Festival in 2018. And we had Jarvis Cocker and Steve Mackey do their dance floor meditations. So we carpeted the TV studio floor, and Jarvis Cocker's talking you through the decades of music. And we had an exhibition from artist Richard Wentworth in the Galvanisers. And then we also had Judy Blame, an amazing jeweler and designer. She had actually just passed away, but we had an exhibition of hers in one of the archways. And then we also had Hugo Scott with a photography exhibition on as well. So it just really felt like there was so many different types of things going on in the building at once. But, and also in Glasgow, that weekend is always such a bustling weekend. So yeah, it was just, that was a real kind of standout one for me.
Okay, starting to feel quite excited now about when my next gig might be. Norry, what was the last gig you were at?
I think it was Kid Congo Powers and the Pink Monkey Birds at Room 2 just off Nelson Mandela Place. Kid Congo Powers might not mean anything to a broader audience, but he played with the Cramps, he played with the Gun Club, all these really exciting American sort of post-punk bands. And I think he's now in his 70s, but he still puts on an absolutely spectacular show. And in a small venue like that, where you're crowded together, it probably only holds about 200 or 300 folk. By the time he starts hitting the big tunes, the whole place is just going absolutely mental.
Can he beat it? What about the first? Do you remember your first gig?
I'm pretty sure my first sort of big proper gig was the Jam at the Apollo, and I think that must have been about 1980. And it came as something as a shock, because it was the first time I'd been to the Apollo, and I'd managed to secure tickets for the second row of the stalls without realising that the stage was 15 foot high. So from my seat, all I could see was a wooden wall of stage. I couldn't see anything on the stage.
Norry, you've tipped us into our final piece this week, the mythical, the legendary, and perhaps the most well-remembered venue of the Glasgow gigging scene. It's the Apollo. I'm a little too young to have been there in person. I think my first gig was 1992. But Norry, you were there. Can you talk about the Apollo? Can you tell us what it was and where it was?
Right from the 1920s, when it opened as Glasgow's first super cinema, Green's Playhouse, it was one of the most important entertainment venues in Glasgow. It occupied an entire block between Renfield Street and West Nile Street, bordered by Renfrew Street, where the huge tall multiplex cinema is now, and the Walkabout Bar and the basement comedy club. I mean, the place could sit 2,700 people. And Green's Playhouse had staged gigs in the late 60s into the early 70s. Jimi Hendrix had played there, Pink Floyd had played there, huge numbers of really big name touring bands. But by the early 70s, Green's Playhouse was really showing its age. Most of the sort of more modern bands actually wanted to play more modern venues. So when the Beatles came to Glasgow, they played at the Odeon further down Renfield Street. But Glasgow was crying out for a dedicated live music venue. This is the early 70s, it's the height of the rock music scene. So a couple of Glasgow entrepreneurs took on the lease of Green's Playhouse and renamed it the Apollo. And the reason for the short name, Apollo, is that the sign makers wanted £250 for every letter, so they came up with the shortest name they could think of. They'd called it anything more, they'd been out of pocket. And the first ever gig at the Apollo, incredibly, was Johnny Cash. 2 nights in 1973. What I wouldn't have given to see Johnny Cash live in Glasgow. That must have been something else. Because Glasgow and country music have this long association. But the Apollo still has this legendary status. Bands who played there still talk about it. Big name bands recorded live albums at it. Bits of Live and Dangerous by Thin Lizzy. Bits of Roxy Music's Viva, their only live album, recorded at the Apollo. Huge numbers of bands recorded things at the Apollo because the Glasgow audience would always go absolutely crazy. And why or wherefore, but the balcony at the Apollo was actually sprung. So if you get a really full house and the balcony crowd were going mad, the balcony moved up and down by about 4 or 5 inches. And you could see that from the stage. And if you were on the balcony, my God, you could feel it. You thought the whole building was about to cave in itself.
I mean, what did it feel like? I mean, you described that, but what did it feel like seeing a band there?
The sheer atmosphere. I spoke earlier about finding your own tribe or finding your own musical clan. The first time I went to see the Jam there, practically every mod revivalist in the whole of the west of Scotland was there. It was an entire audience of folk in Jam suits, parkas, pork pie hats, you name it. So you all look the same, and you've got this huge gang of you in there. There's 2,500, and there's not a single grown-up to tell you to sit down, shut up, take your feet off the seats. So you could go absolutely wild.
And people did. It sounds amazing. I mean, for people who do want to maybe get a small sense of it, there is a Blondie gig that was recorded there. I think was at Hogmanay, 1979.
Hogmanay 79, broadcast live on, I think it was BBC Two, by the old Grey Whistle Test. Anyone that sold out the Apollo was always presented with a trophy, saying you've sold out the Apollo. There's a wonderful picture of Debbie Harry after it getting presented, but that wasn't Blondie's first visit to Glasgow. There's a weekend in, I think it's 1977, May 77, and I wish I had been old enough, because on the Friday night or the Saturday night, I think it was the Friday night, you could have gone to Strathclyde Students' Union and seen the Talking Heads support the Ramones, and then on the Sunday night you could have gone to the Apollo and seen Blondie support Television.
What a weekend that would have been.
The cream of the CBGB's punk scene, all in Glasgow. And the great thing is, Chris Stein from Blondie, Debbie Harry's then partner, of course, he's a wonderful and very keen photographer, and he captured those gigs brilliantly.
What did this place mean to the bands who played there?
I think it was very much a badge of honour. If you moved up to play an Apollo gig, because as much as Apollo audiences could be very, very appreciative, if they didn't like you, they sure as hell let you know as well. The number of big name bands that just took a nosedive at the Apollo. I'm sure an awful lot of bands, the week before their Apollo debut would have been bricking themselves. I mean, one of the ones that I was too young for, the sensational Alex Harvey band played a series of Christmas gigs over the course of about 3 or 4 years. Every Christmas they would play the Apollo, and those gigs are just absolutely legendary. Anyone that was there will tell you, because the whole audience was on Alex's side. Alex was one of us, and we were one of him. We felt part of the band.
And being one of us, I mean, what's special about a Glasgow crowd? They tell us every time they come here, but what's special about us?
I don't know. I think it's that sheer enthusiasm. To an extent, you think, if you live in, say, London, Paris, New York, you've got big name bands all the time, but when a big name band comes to Glasgow, well, you turn out for it. Whether it's now at the Hydro or back down at the Barrowlands, if there's a big name band coming to town, the fight for tickets is immense. You know yourself, you're going to have a bloody good night out, because you've spent big money and you're going to make sure you enjoy yourself. And if you're enjoying yourself, the folk around you tend to enjoy themselves as well, because everyone's there for the one thing, and it's the music.
That's the ticket. Listen, that was fun. I'm definitely in the mood for some music now. I said it at the head of the episode, I think we've only scratched the surface of music, but that's been a really enjoyable chat with you today. We'll be back for more music episodes soon. But that's it today for a very musical episode of Curious City. Huge thanks to Norry Wilson for being our curious guest and music lover. See you next time on Curious City.